Okay, today's chapter 22. Yeah, 22. So next week is the last one. So welcome, and Alicia is leading, and she's got a beautiful set of questions for us to work through. Okay.
So actually, first of all, I'd like to ask everybody how they felt about this chapter, because I was very resistant. I couldn't understand a thing. I was angry, and I just was like, I don't want to do this. So that was how I felt in the beginning when I first read it. So I'm just curious about what everybody else feels about this chapter generally.
Yeah, I felt exactly the same way. Too many words, just too many words. Didn't like it. And I'm feeling like, well, I'm glad Aphraar likes her, because I don't think I like her. So he must think she's pretty awesome, and that's nice. And then I could actually hear her laughing. She thought that was pretty funny when I admitted to myself, I don't really even like you that much. Like, I don't like you. Too many words, too much gooky sentimentality and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, oops. She seemed to appreciate my honesty and really didn't take it that seriously.
Anyone else?
I had some resistance to it in the beginning, and I had a difficult time getting into it.
Yeah.
And then once I did, then it was okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and I was able to finish it.
That's lovely. How about Michael?
I had resistance too, and your questions kind of like they drew open the shade on it. They drew open the curtains, and it made some of what she said made sense to me. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share, Michaela?
I took a while to get into it as well, but I feel like once I did, there were these little blossomings of an awareness that I'd never even realized, but so small and so much to step into. So I found it quite hard to even answer your questions, because I felt like I was grasping something that was starting to blossom, but I wasn't able to kind of grasp it, if you know what I mean.
I hear you, because the questions came to me. Actually, I went to sleep. I was thinking about Michaela and sleep state. I went to sleep feeling angry about it, but with prayer, with like, I need to work through this while I'm sleeping. So could I just please wake up with something? So I actually woke up with the first question.
Wow.
Well, the first question, it was more like, well, what are you feeling about this, and how are you engaging this, and I felt like it was all about that Aphraar was asking us to engage with how we feel about it, but also engage how we feel rather than what's going on for him so much. Like, how are we engaging what's going on?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why it sort of ended up like that. And also there were things that I thought, I need to think about this myself for sure. So let's meet Mila.
So for me, for a change, because I've been tantruming for 2 books now, I think I ran out of tantrum for this chapter. So there was not much resistance. I got into the chapter very quickly. And there were some moments that were like bombshells for me. I just had to stop and just gasp and cry. And it's still, unfolding. I felt like some big moments of my life were answered in that chapter. And I was just screaming and crying, and just like, it really shook it up with some of the revelations in that chapter like that. So after all of this difficulty over the 2 books, I'm feeling it's like a word beyond hopeful. Like this place inside of me that's kind of like it's a done deal. Like it is, is it a kind of faith? Is it a kind of conviction? I don't know what it is, but it's, So
it's like hope that it's not quite solid ground yet, but it's towards solid ground.
It's stronger than hope.
Yeah.
Stronger than hope. Hope you still kind of, I feel like isn't that doesn't have as much conviction. Is something as if a knowing, some kind of knowing is in my bone.
Yeah, that's what I meant, that hope's on bubbly ground and faith is on solid ground. So it's like
right
between that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get on with the questions. So the first one, basically, I felt like this chapter, by the time I got through some of my resistance, was really about honoring God, realizing how amazing God is, and choosing God, basically, is what I felt it was really about. So anyway, with the first question, this is when Aphraar, Kushner, and Zizveni have just returned with Clarice from the dark hell where they found her. And Aphraar reflects on an interblending of sorrow and joy that daybreak burst from midnight gloom. And he refers to Kushner as being well accustomed to administering to such requirements as Clarice immediately stood in need of. And that Clarice is fearful from her knowledge of the past, but Kushner solaced her fears. So my question was, can you feel and relate to these words in your own healing journey, your own progression in yourself, in others, helping you and helping others? Or make up your own question, but around that, basically around that moving from sorrow into joy in different areas of our life. Oh, well, no one wants to say anything yet. So I should just share that, well, I feel like I have a lot of waves of resistance. Like I may have days and days of resistance, and then I'll eventually soften, and then I'll go maybe into some sorrow, have a good old cry, a tantrum about something, and I feel relieved. And then I feel like giggling actually often. I just feel really light. But it goes through waves of that. It's not like I'm always like, oh yes, I've made it now. It feels like, oh, another wave keeps coming. And yeah, I feel more grateful than ever for people who've helped me, whether they're teachers, which I was aware of at the time, maybe, but in reflecting on different relationships, let's say, whether they're intimate or just friendship relationships, I can see how I've learned a lot from that I've gone through big sorrow, and then I've come to see how that's happened and what's evolved and how I've learned from it, and it's brought me joy in the end. So
I'm going to rephrase the question.
Yes, please.
How do you guys feel about the level of assistance Clarice has received and Aphraar has received, and now Clarice sounds like she's at the beginning of second sphere herself, the house of rest kind of area, and Aphraar's in the sixth. How do you feel about the kind of support they are receiving, and compared to how do you feel about how much support you feel you're receiving? Michaela?
I feel like my mind just keeps getting wiped out, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. But I feel more through this book, especially, it's really helped me to develop more faith in God, and so to kind of recognize the little steps along the way that all seem to come together in a way that we don't recognize, but that does have an outcome. But I know for me, this feeling of more faith is quite a new feeling. And for a long time, I felt very unsupported and so confused, and like nobody was helping me, and really angry about that. And I really went through this period of having to connect to how alone I feel and how much I feel like I'm in a black void where no one can get to me and no one's going to help me, and I have to work it all out. And that was kind of what I had to go through to start to be open to realizing that there's help in every step that I take. So that's been nice to recognize that more. It's definitely given me some just feel more better about the way that I'm going to move forwards, you know, because I realize I'm not alone.
Yeah. I've had 2 decades of feeling, God, where were you? And that question was answered a week ago. And now there's this new step of faith in how I address the wounded self, because that answer, the question has been answered. So it sounds like we have to go through a bit of that dark night of the soul feeling of, where's my help? Nobody's helping me.
Yeah, I agree. And I also have that, I have more faith now too, that it's almost like God is right there. Our guides are right there, like right next to us, but it's only us who needs to just open to allowing them in. And they're almost like supporting us to go through all those dark times.
Yeah, I think that that's a necessary.
Yeah, they're right there, but almost like step back a little bit to give the space to go through those things.
Yeah. One time Michaela visited me in my sleep state, and she saw that I was looking down and crying and alone and in the kind of feeling really dark, but that I was surrounded by some beautiful guides, like 6 of them, just waiting for the opportunity to help me. But that I wasn't open to them. Like that visual gave me kind of a beautiful feeling of, well, yeah, I am doing that. I am kind of all inward and angry and not recognizing, or maybe they were helping me feel that. Maybe that was what I was supposed to feel. So it's a question. I have a question now. Is that something we're supposed to go through? Because it sounds as if I don't want to fall into judging ourselves for not accepting help when maybe that is the help. The help is to feel through that. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to work through that at this point.
Yeah. I feel like, Michael, let's listen to Michael. You're mute, darling.
Jesus said something quite some time ago. You might have remembered it. It was to the effect that we have to, because we're going through these struggles, it might have had to do with faith, because we're going through things on the earth, we learn it better, or we get more blessings because we're going through it, it seems like, with less help. It's
Or more oppression. Maybe the help is the same, but there's more oppression too. So less ability to notice the help, or more oppressive.
but there's some advantage to making it, even though we're here, and not as easy as we think it would be in the spirit world. That's it.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Anybody else like to share? No? Oh, Michaela.
Something that I found that turned things around for me, and I like, Alicia, how you said you used your sleep state to work out a question, was to really start to work through my belief and my false beliefs around the sleep state, and to see that as a really powerful time to work with stuff. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's what started to shift for me as well, is seeing that support and having that more contact with the spiritual, even whilst I'm still in the physical.
Yeah, I agree. There's a number of times when I've gone to bed with something up in the air, and I've slept better because I've gone to bed with the intention of it, like working through it to a certain extent. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, my answer to your question was, I feel like I'm currently being trained on how to respond to the hurt self. So I'm kind of observing how my guides are wanting me to treat the hurt self. And so what I've noticed is that there's a reassurance of everything's going to be okay. They're constantly conveying that. And also that with each layer that get exposed, to treat it as if it is a very, very precious thing to respond to, as if you have all the time in the world. This is a very important step. be very present and very particular in how I respond to that hurt self. So there's this kind of like this delicate, deliberate, mindful presence. So I feel like what I'm being shown is how I'm being treated by my guides. And so I'm kind of just modeling off that must be how we're all being treated all the time.
Yeah, and I notice when I'm more aware of that for myself and how our spirit friends are helping us, that I'm more aware of being that for other people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We treat others the way we were treated, as it turns out. So now that we're being treated, we're recognizing how we're being treated by our true family. We're also then modeling how then we want to treat others.
Yeah, lovely. Selena, what would you like to say?
Well, just on that theme of how our guides are always there to help us, I'm finding more and more, I'm in my experiences just asking guides, how can I help this person? What can I do? So today I'm just sitting in the hallway waiting for my client to get off the toilet, and this lady is dying. She looks like she's dying in a room, and I'm looking at her and just going, what can I do for this lady? How can I pray for her? And I instantly got a vision of her guide. It was so funny. She was so funny. She's like elbowing away everybody else because she's trying to be prominent as this lady passes. She wants to be the first. She wants to make sure that she wants to try and show all this love. Yeah. And she says it doesn't hardly ever work, but we always do it anyway, because there's sort of this moment of transition when people pass that where they can make choices, and they can either go to the love or go to what's familiar. And most of us haven't understood even what it means to feel our guide's love, or to yearn for that love, or like that love, or want it. And I just felt so fortunate that we've learned that, how to try to, we keep trying to access our guides and access that love and access that help, because when you pass, then that's what you want, that feeling. You don't go to the familiar, and it's just like, it was like such a big aha moment. But yet, even though so often that it doesn't work, she's so happy to just be there 100% with every fiber of her being, giving all the love she can to this person, just to hope that she chose love.
Yeah.
But when you've never learned how to yearn for love,
and
you
her
don't
journey to be there for that lady would hopefully have even a slight impression on her.
Yes, even if it's slight, because then later when they do start to want love, hopefully that memory will come back, that there was someone there that just, it's almost scary, I think, for people who've never really yearned for love, because it's just so overwhelming and so big and so bright and so wonderful that it's like, oh no, I'll go over to these dark people here. They're familiar. I know them. Yes, familiarity is more important.
Sorry, as you say, Selena, we're blessed to be aware that we do have that support.
Yeah.
And that we're not alone, even if we feel alone sometimes, and even if we feel unsupported sometimes.
Yeah.
There is still a part of us that knows, well, actually I'm not.
Yeah. I think too, what really struck me is how simple it was for this woman's guide. Like, I just pour love into this person, and we make it complicated with all of our other desire for the familiar. I don't know how else to put that. Like, we don't yearn for love. We yearn for the familiar, for what we're comfortable, what we've been taught, what we learn, whether it's our culture or our religion or people in our family or how we've been treated, how we think of ourselves, just what's familiar. Yeah. That's what matters, not that love. There's no yearning for love. It's neat.
We do make it more complicated than it is.
Oh yeah, it was so simple for her. I love that person with everything I have, and hopefully they'll come to me, come to the love. Oh yeah.
Selena, thanks for sharing. So I'm not sure who was next, but I'll go with Michaela and then Michael.
Just on that yearning for love idea, one thing that I've connected to just in this last few weeks is how much as a child I did yearn for love. And I was always putting out so much desire. Well, maybe it wasn't yearning for love, but I was putting out this longing to be received. And I don't really understand it so much, but what became clear was I was always longing and it was never being met. And so in the end, it just was like, well, there must be something wrong with me. So that's where I feel like I kind of gave up on that yearning for love and just settled in with what was around me, because that was all I could do.
Yeah, I can relate to that, Michaela, definitely. And it becomes almost like a neediness when we go into needing that. Yeah.
So I think for me, the addiction to the future came in, because it's like, well, one day it's going to get met, but I always was just like, it's going to be one day. It's never going to be today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, Michaela. Thank you. So Michael.
What I like Selena's comment too, because thinking about passing over, I hadn't thought of this, but passing over, will I choose the comfortable and the familiar, or will I choose what's loving? And I'm learning now that love is not always what's comfortable. Not that it's difficult, but I would say love is an addiction. Up until the things that I'm addicted to are the things I would think of loving. So, and so what that's linking to in my memory is in one of the Divine Truth talks. He says, learning to love is something that you do in the second sphere. You learn to choose love. Anyway, love becomes more important in the second sphere, and then truth becomes more important as you go into the third sphere. So I think I'm becoming aware of a quality of the second sphere, I would say, and this would have escaped me a couple of weeks ago.
That's beautiful, Michael. That's something to contemplate. Go back to that. Okay, anyone else like to make a comment? So no, let's go on. So, well, number 2. Oh, actually, I had another question with this area. Aphraar considers, I was for the 3rd time standing in view of that entrancing prismatic landscape, and I was instantly busy comparing and contrasting the special incident in connection with each visit. Then my own change of viewpoint due to the light I had received. So I just was asking, and maybe we've partly reflected on this already, about how you look at your own life and see your life now from a completely different perspective, probably, or different areas of your life from a different perspective, just from learning DT, for example. So anyone like to comment on this? Or we'll move on. Okay, Mila.
The one observation looking back the past few years is that I look back now and realize that I was judging and punishing the hurt self that was an addiction. That is an addiction. So I look back now and realize that I was attacking that addict self, and that was not cool. So I can look back now and see that the way I was treating the hurt self, which includes the sinner, was really inappropriate. Something to reflect on now.
Yeah, that's something for me similar, that I felt like I haven't been compassionate enough with myself and been quite hard on myself, which is, what we often learn.
Yeah.
When we're younger. And of course, we can think of maybe lots of physical things that we've changed along the way, and some things feel too uncomfortable not to do, or too uncomfortable to do now, that because we have a different perspective on life. Yeah. So there was something here that I couldn't quite get. I kept reading it and I was like, I'm still not getting it.
You want to hear Michaela's comment?
Sorry, I missed your hand, Michaela. I apologize. I felt you wanted to say something, but I didn't see you.
I did, but I hesitate. About perspective, I guess our perspective is going to constantly change. Is that forever, or is that just until we're at one with God, do you think? Maybe forever, uncertain.
Forever, yeah.
Yeah. And what I've been noticing, it just keeps going out of my head. Sorry. I just noticed, like, one thing I'm sort of trying to teach my kids at the moment as well, and myself, is that to ask somebody else's perspective on something, especially now on the earth, is just complete waste of time. So it's like trying to shift from like wanting to get approval and understanding and fit in with the perspective on earth versus choosing to understand God's perspective. But then you've got to be prepared to just like really stand alone from the crowd, really, I think is what I'm sort of battling with at the moment, is wanting everyone's approval versus wanting the truth and wanting God's love, you know.
Yeah, it's like we want to know other people's perspectives to try to understand where they're coming from, but we really want them to veer towards God at the same time and see God's perspective. By the way, you've frozen, Michaela. Oh, now you're back.
Alicia, you were frozen. So,
Okay.
yeah. All right, carry on. Question 2.
So I asked, so Aphraar thought what providence it would be if the ignorantly blinded eye, could always be united with a dumb tongue, and how much better would mankind be circumstanced if such a union could be enforced? Well, I didn't really get this, so I'm just hoping for your insights, basically. If anyone has any. Michaela?
I thought maybe it was about like, if you don't know what you're doing, if somebody else can't hear what you don't know, so you're not giving each other misinformation. That was kind of what I thought it was about, but I wasn't sure if that was right or not.
Okay, thank you. Selena, dear.
I thought it meant that people who can't see truth shouldn't be able to talk as if they do. Yeah.
Yeah, possibly.
I thought they were talking about, like, too bad it isn't that way. If you don't know the truth, suddenly you can't even open your mouth. It's like kind of cool, actually.
Okay, thanks, Selena. Michael?
I had the same version as Selena, except not as loving. I thought so that a person who doesn't know anything can't open his big mouth. And I thought, well, why would an idea like that make it into this book? And so thank you for showing me, Selena, that it wasn't the way I interpreted it.
Yeah, I sort of had a similar feeling, but I thought, I must be wrong. This can't be right that this is being said. And I couldn't understand for myself. If I look at myself, okay, then I need to, if I really don't know the truth, do I need to just shut up? So anyway, so maybe that's something that we can still ponder on at some stage. Anyone else like to say anything? Virginia.
I thought it was the difference between awake and not awake yet.
Mm-hmm.
Not really, not talking about the sleep state, but when we awaken to what is really happening and truth and so on. But in that time when we're not awake and you have a totally different perspective, you can still speak and teach and lead people, even if it's not towards love.
Yes.
So I just saw it as someone who is awake and someone who is not awake. And that you can still speak about it as much as you want. Free will.
Well, that's great. Thanks everybody for that. Cleared a bit of that up for me. So moving on to question 3, which is on page 187. And Aphraar is considering whether to use his new power or not. And there's quite a lot written here, but I just cut it down a little bit. So he says, he's thinking, was it an encouragement or a temptation that doubtfully flickered? The balance swung with delicate indecision. Then a gentle breeze carries Aphraar away to a vision of a nation in breathless indecision, which is basically the scene of Elijah on Mount Carmel, where I don't know the full story, maybe some of you do, but I just know that it's about the King Ahab having created a temple for the god Baal instead of for the God of heaven. And I believe that Israel had a drought for a few years. And so there was a question of whether people were going to choose this God Baal, or they were going to choose the God of heaven. And I believe it was like, well, make up your mind, basically. So he said, he continues on with this: how long halt you between two opinions? The challenge awoke me. Was not that the answer for which I had waited? And for me, that means the two opinions, and Aphraar's choosing God rather than something else. So I just asked all of you if you could contemplate times that you've had when you've been in doubt and been indecisive and not sure which way to go and what choice to make, and where do you look for your support? Do you look to others, to your intellect, to God, your guides? So that's the basic question. So I wondered if any of you had some times when you've been doubtful. And if you'd like to comment on that at all. Virginia.
I feel that all the time. It happens all the time in many things. I used to seek other people's opinions for help. But now I feel I go inward more, and learning to trust that if I ask for assistance, that it'll come to me, and I'm learning to be more aware, because it can come from the most unlikely places.
Yes.
It could be sleep state, it could just be from anyone, any situation, and you think, oh yeah, I asked about that. And sometimes it just doesn't come right away. And I used to get upset with myself about that. Like I was doing something wrong because I wasn't getting an answer like right now. I wasn't getting that. And now that I understand it a bit better and wait, it does eventually come, but perhaps I wasn't noticing because I was expecting the answer to come in a specific way. And then it can come to me in anywhere, from anyone, really. So now I feel like I get more answers.
I feel like it's an important point that you brought up at the beginning, that you tend not to go straight and ask someone else their opinion, that you wait and you ask the question, but you're not asking it of another, you're asking it of yourself, of your guides, of God or whatever, and trusting that the answer is going to come, that you have more faith in the answer coming wherever it comes from. Yeah, I think that's been a learning for me too. That's lovely. Thank you for sharing, Virginia. Michaela?
I agree with Virginia in that I like to doubt things a lot. But one thing I noticed I started doing a couple of years ago, which was really powerful for me, was to spend like a couple of days or 24 hours in one decision and don't let anything else come in around the other decision, so that I can feel what I feel about that decision. And then spend the next day in the other decision and connect into the feelings associated with that decision. And I found that really helped me, probably to connect into my guides and also to my emotions around the confusion. So that definitely made a difference for me.
That's great. So more pinpointing it, because I can feel for myself, sometimes it feels like a mishmash of so many different decisions to make. So I like that you hone in on one.
And I've also noticed more recently that often when I go into this place of confusion, I already have a picture of what's going to happen. And I feel like that's kind of my intuition, or maybe my guides, or maybe something else. And I always end up doing that, but it's like I have to go through the mess and the indecision and the doubt and the fear of getting it wrong and all of that kind of shit, even though I already know what choice I'm going to make. So I'm just really noticing that in myself now, and trying to trust the intuition part, or at least experiment to see if that is what it is, and to just go with what I'm seeing is going to happen. And I guess see if that is pointing me in the right direction or the wrong direction.
It sounds like almost like you're purifying what your vision is.
Well, hopefully. I mean, it could just be a spirit showing me a picture that's totally the wrong direction. But I guess I'm just I'll experiment with it and find out what's going on in that.
Yeah, that's the point, isn't it? Experimenting with it.
Oh, and not being afraid to make a mistake, or, get what you're wanting to get from other people by the choice that you're making, and just really unwrapping the motivation behind the choices as well, and the decisions.
That's great. Would anyone else like to share? Michael?
I think what this brings up for me is I frequently have to decide between what I want to do and what I feel is right to do. Mm-hmm. And I usually choose what I want to do, which ends up being the messy choice. Mm-hmm. So I was impressed by Virginia's answer that we're also learning how to listen. I mean, because we're not, or how to notice when an answer comes. There's another sensitivity that's coming, that's in addition to what is the choice I should make. We're learning several lessons when we ask a question and then have to wait to perceive the answer. And then when we notice it really is coming, then we realize that we're not alone, like Mila has. Wow.
Yeah, we can go into judging ourselves a lot about being indecisive, or about making a decision that we know is probably not right, but it's what we want to do, instead of just like letting ourselves make the mistake, letting ourselves realize we still perhaps need to develop some desire and faith in making a different choice, rather than always necessarily pushing ourselves. Yeah, I think we all have a lot of indecision, but I like that Ailele, however much we like her or don't like her, affirms that to turn to God, because she's having had this chat, which she's been off with King David, and talking to him about the 23rd Psalm, which basically says, the Lord is my shepherd, meaning he's going to lead us anyway. So for me, that was like an affirmation, like turn to God in all things. So if no one else has something else to say, I'm going to move on to number 4, page 188, when Aphraar shares his experience when he's been speaking with Ailele. And this is just a short part. But she knows and leads me into the secret habitat of confidence, across the azure skies of which no cloud of doubt has yet been known to pass, the rest that has not yet been broken or shaken, where omnipotence is gentle and tender, and the wonderful is natural, naive, and ingenuous. I can speak to her with more ease and freedom, with the perfect assurance that I cannot possibly be misunderstood or doubtfully interpreted. So in reply to her invitation, I flung the floodgates of my soul wide open and poured out my pent-up feelings. Oh, to have that. To have that someone understands everything. So I was asking all of you, how do you feel when somebody truly, truly is listening? I mean, like feeling you and listening to you without judgment, and that you feel safe and open and honest in those situations. And also, do you feel that you're able to truly listen to others? So anyone have any comments or anything that they want to share?
Or maybe have you not experienced it ever?
Yeah. Yes, good point. Virginia?
When I've experienced this, it feels really safe
Mhm.
and secure, and it's really a gift. As to whether I'm able to offer this, and sometimes I do. It's really difficult to be so impartial and loving
Yeah.
and be 100% there without any judging at all, without any expectations. It's difficult, but it's also a nice space to be in when you can do it for someone else.
Yeah, I agree. It feels, to me, it feels like a learning process to be able to, which is why a couple of times I think I've just listened to all of you and not said anything, because it was just so beautiful to really feel and listen to everyone. So I feel like we're all learning to do that. But you're right, when you're with someone who's really listened to you, and it's almost like you're seen. You're completely seen, and you don't have to hide anything. So you feel comfortable to be honest and open with them. Yeah, it's a beautiful experience.
I think you have to be comfortable with your own shadows, with
Yeah.
your own darkness, in order to be able to do that for others. Like if you judge yourself, then you're going to judge others. So the more you're comfortable with your own skin, the more you're comfortable with somebody else.
Yeah, that's so true. I noticed for myself, I've noticed throughout the years, there are definitely times when I speak too much and don't listen more, but there are also times when people just open up to me that have never opened up to the closest people to them. And that's always interesting to me, that I guess because they don't have an emotional attachment to you necessarily. But yeah.
That's a good journey to go on. You know, what does it mean to listen well?
Yeah.
What is Ailele doing in that situation that allows her to really listen? Is it that she's really interested? Is it that she truly cares? Is it that she's happy in her own skin, so she likes everybody else? Could it be a concept of timelessness, that, you know, well, once you get to a place of timelessness, there's all the time in the world to just be with somebody? Like what drives that ability to really listen? Like that's a cool thing to explore.
Absolutely, I agree. There was a lot you said in there that I can capture. So yeah, thank you, Mila. Michaela.
I feel like I'm kind of experimenting with the idea of that God is listening like that, and more I'm and recognizing that there's no blocks coming at me. I don't have to defend myself. I don't even have to explain myself. I can just talk. And that's been a real opening for me, to be able to get more and more comfortable with that idea that I could just say anything and it doesn't matter. So that's been good, because I don't really think it's been modeled to me ever, and I certainly don't know how to do it. I struggle with listening and not being reactive and thinking of what to say next and all that kind of stuff. So I think I'm just working on learning it from God at the moment, I guess.
It'd be really cool to ask God. So God, why are you such a good listener? Where is that coming from? That'd be really cool to ask.
I guess she really comfortable in their skin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yes. Huh. And maybe that's why. So, well, anyway, just some thoughts. It's okay.
Yeah, I think it's a huge one for us all to be more aware of. Even just listen, not necessarily even to other people, just being aware of listening more to God, to our guides, and talking to God, because we know God's listening. Like, that's such a great example for us to feel how it is to listen, to show us an example for how we're to be with other people. Anyway, anyone else? No? So
Michael?
Oh, Michael, sorry. Apologize.
It was just a late thought that flew in. I could listen to myself that way, right?
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Listen to
Can
myself.
I just add to that one? That if you're going to listen to yourself that way, you might as well put it to God. Like that's one of my suggestions to so many people. Talk it out loud to God, even if you don't believe. Just talk, you know, and that just seems to open something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, guys. So let's move on to number 5 on page 188. Aphraar shares his aspiration and experience in saving Clarice from the hells with Ailele. And she responds, yes, that is just how I should expect the Father to respond to your aspiration. He giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, even though the petition be made on behalf of one in hell. And Ailele indirectly refers to Clarice. A single stab or spasm of remorse is capable of liquidating the penalty of certain great sins, where an instant of intensity is accepted as the equivalent to a period of duration. And I'm going to continue. She continues emphasizing how the prayer of faith shall save the sick, hence you brought Clarice away with you. Personally, I feel pretty inspired by Aphraar's prayer of faith and the providence that followed that. And this inspires me to develop my own faith in following my own passions and following what I think are my passions when they may not be, but at least to give it a go and to pray more and be more humble, to dive into all the muck, basically. So I was wondering how you feel about Aphraar's prayer of faith and Ailele's response for your own life. Michaela?
What this section inspired in me was about that the prayer can work for others. Like I know, particularly once I started to discover divine truth, but probably more when I was in the preachy phase and not so much in the connecting truthfully to a phase. But I found it so, I'd walk away from certain people and just feel so hopeless because they just, they did not believe, and it just seemed like they were so stuck where they were. And so to know that to pray for them is actually gonna bring about something, you know, I guess it made me feel excited and that I can create change that way, but I don't have to try and break it all apart with them and work it out. You know, it's up to God, and God's got it already, but my prayer is maybe going to add something to that person's ability to receive or something. So that just felt really cool. I was happy about that.
Yeah, so that's that wonderful feeling of, even though we don't feel like we can do anything or we can't make a difference, if we pray in however we pray, that, or we have that very specific passionate intention, that actually it's being taken care of. As Mila's always saying, how is God already helping? Because God is already helping each individual, and our prayer is going to help with that assistance. Yeah, it's I like the way you said that, that preachy stage. I
For a while.
So Virginia, dear.
Those words, a single stab or spasm of remorse is capable of liquidating penalty. I just those words, like it just really gives me a lot of hope that sounds like every little opportunity is taken here to bring you to a better place. And it doesn't have to be a big revelation. Every step we take, and when we feel something sincerely, that it's worth something, it's being looked at right away and responded to. Like, that's just amazing to me. It's just those words.
Yeah, I agree. So we can be in maybe days of resistance, but then we soften and we have this huge revelation, we have this huge sorrow that comes up, And that might just be for a few minutes, hours, or whatever it is, but it's a lot less than the resistance. And that in itself has shifted something. So yeah, I agree. This is a huge thing for me. Thanks for sharing, Virginia. Would anyone else like to share something from their own experience? Selena?
Yeah, I like that too, like Virginia, just so much, because it just to remove that little bit of denial and just go, oh yeah, I am that person, you know, that does that thing, and but without judgment of yourself. Like it's just, and that it just changes so much to just admit to yourself, oh yeah, I did that. I'm human and I got things happen to me and I did this thing. You know, it's just really great. Yeah. And yet we're so hard to come to it from there because we have so many reasons to be in denial of our naughtiness, but it gets pretty good results when we aren't.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else like to share? Mila?
Yeah, I am hoping that this gives a lot of inspiration and courage to us, as well as the earthbound spirits, that, you know, just open the door to feeling the remorse. And, you know, sometimes it feels like I did too many things, there's too much pain, you know, I'll never get through it. But God does have this mercy that just open. And it was beautiful to read that, just that one stab of remorse from God's perspective, that's it. We're good. It's all clear coming out.
Yeah.
Wow. Like, yeah, it really blew my mind.
It does happen like that, doesn't it? When you feel that remorse come up, it's like, whoa, I just feel so terrible. And then it comes pretty quickly that, well, what can I do about this? How can I correct this? How can I repair something here? What can I do? And we have the faith that however someone else receives it, we know that we're actually doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Mila. Did you have something you want to share, Michael? No, okay.
Yeah, I have a friend who's met AJ in Philadelphia, and he's always, I'm going to encourage him to listen to this one. He's finding fault, he's a critic, and with that attitude, you miss the point. There's so much, I could call it magic, but there's such sensitivity and subtleness and effort to assist that is at work with God, that we can attune ourselves to and begin to grow and feel and have faith in. That you know, just because earth changes didn't happen in 2012 like they were predicted, doesn't mean throw away the whole kit and caboodle. You know, just the resistance is such a powerful block, and it's fault. I mean, blocks are not real, but they're so effective at keeping us from finding what's real.
Yeah.
And you know, I can't explain these things that we're feeling here. People have to go into themselves and feel them and recognize them. Well, yeah, truth is emotional.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Michael. Just when you said block, I don't know, I just saw that word suddenly as lock. I saw belief and block. So I saw lie, like the word lie in the middle of it, and block as in lock down. So I just had a flash of those words. It's so true. Our beliefs and block us often what we think is right. Thank you. That's great. Okay, moving on. If no one else had anything to say. So on number 6, Aphraar recalls a part of Ailele's poem from a previous chapter in which she's speaking of God and heaven. And the poem is, oh, the vision would overpower us if it was suddenly given. So we wait in preparation in the vestibule of heaven. And then on page 190, Ailele speaks of becoming yet purer as you progress through the heavenly spheres? And Aphraar asks, and is such a goal attainable? It seems an impossibility to reach. And Ailele replies, just so impossible does it appear to the child that he can ever be as his father. She continues further on the page, as drops of water aggregating will fill the bed of an ocean, so holy aspiration will enable us to reach the pinnacle of divine perfection. And we have eternity to reach the goal. So I just was asking about, if we look back on our lives, can we see that growth that's happened, which we maybe covered a little bit with looking at the perspective that we now have. And how do you feel about reaching the goal, the gate of heaven and God? And can you feel the possibility, or does it just seem too far away and impossible for you at the moment? Anyone have any thoughts or feelings about this? Michaela.
I just can't stand that moment when no one responds. I just feel like I have to respond. I feel like in terms of noticing the change, the thing that because I've always, I found it hard to be able to reflect on myself honestly for such a long time. And the thing that now more and more I kind of almost rely on to reflect to me change is my children. Mm-hmm. And I feel grateful that I'm finally in that place where I'm able to look at them and to see how that's reflecting on me, where they're at. And so that's been a great way for me to be able to see where I've changed, just to sort of look at my children. And I guess your other external environment as well, but we can still control that, can't we, on Earth? So I don't know if that's such a clear reflection of our change.
Well, and maybe also, I mean, I don't have children, but I can watch the dogs. I haven't watched what they're doing or see what the ants are doing in my apartment or whatever. And there's loads of things that we attract all the time. So I think that we can see whether we're changing or just knowing how we're feeling about for example, today I thought about watching the news, looking at the news, and then I thought, actually today I don't have a desire at all, which is a change. It was like, okay, that's good. So sometimes there's very subtle things that are changing in us, in our desire to do something different. So yeah, thank you for sharing, Michaela. Anyone else like to share? Mila?
Are we speaking about the steps of growth to where we are now?
Yeah.
Or are you also talking about the rest of the question?
With the whole question.
The whole question, okay. To see the steps to where I am now.
For example, the steps to divine truth.
Yeah, exactly. I think my childhood situation was so terrible that very strong desires got created very young. The desperation that drove the survival for myself and my sisters really awakened something really fast and really big from such a young age. So I can't help but keep digging and looking and searching, because there's always some kind of an urgency to someone I care about that I have to figure stuff out. So there's always been this drive to taking steps. And then I will be very insistent in finding answers. So I will be very insistent in, I need to figure this out. So where are my answers? Come on, let's go. Where are my steps? Come on, folks, let's go. So a little bit of a brat, but it drives answers. I will get the book, I will get the instructions, I will find the people. So at some point I've kind of expected that would happen. And right now, when I look at, will I reach the gate, I feel that nothing is going to work until I get back to sixth sphere. It's just not going to, it's almost feeling I have no choice but to get back there because nothing's working. And I feel like it's just not going to be satisfying until whatever it is I'm looking for, the satisfaction, it's just not going to be there until I get back there. And there's also this curiosity that God had made us to start at the sixth sphere. So if that's the starting point, what did God have in mind for us?
Yeah.
What is the life God did have in mind and in design for us? What is over there on that sixth sphere and beyond that God had meant for me to have? If this pain and suffering is not what God ever intended for me, then what did you decide for me, God? I want to know. So there's this curiosity driving the desire to kind of get back to the starting line.
Yeah, because that's very inspiring to be able to feel that, because we know intellectually, yes, we were created pristine and we were created on the sixth level, but to be able to really feel, and as you said, have that curiosity, say, what is this next piece of muck I have to clean off? What is it? Come on, help me, show me. Yeah, that's beautiful, Mila. Thank you for sharing.
Well, mine is usually a lot louder and more tantrumy than that, but yes.
Yeah, well, I'm in an apartment.
I do has a big tantrum.
I would give a scream, but I'm not going to. Mr. Michael Bailey.
This is a good question for me, and I need to spend more time with it. But there was a point early as a young person that life wasn't working, and it was all going along the way I imagined it should, and then it all fell apart. And then you start looking at all these ideas that are out there and trying these things, and they didn't work. And so I see over time, my journey, I've zeroed in. The divine truth is standing like a target with the concentric circles, and I'm getting closer to the center. And I noticed that I've expected resistance all along the way, unpopular, taking up something that's challenges. And divine truth is controversial. So, and then finding that once I make a decision, I'm not bothered by people, and the battles are all interior, and I'm expecting these exterior battles. And I think I'm getting stronger. I think I hadn't noticed it, but I think I'm being lent a little bit of strength for making those decisions, and I hadn't noticed it. And I think I can't picture myself at the gate, but I have a feeling that I'll get there. And I think I'm beginning to be confident in the process. It's going to work in spite of me, but I'm going to be working with it. So in spite of my insignificance, it's going to work.
Yeah.
It's more like I don't see it as something that I will be able to make happen. Like, oh, I'm going to get to 6, 7 and watch. It's more like you said, despite myself or in spite of myself, I'm going to get drawn to it. It's inevitable that somehow God's going to pull me back to that place. So, yeah.
It reminds me of Jesus saying to me, this is when I first learned about divine truth, and I may have said this before in another group, that despite you following, like abdicating your will and following spirit guidance, your guides used your addictions to bring you to divine truth, and you're here now. So despite whatever you're doing, eventually, and all of us have been led here, and we've all gone on all sorts of pathways, but I feel like everyone here is like, well, this is it. There isn't another pathway, much as I know there's like so much to deal with now, but there isn't I'm not going off it. And it also, for me, it also reminded me of when I was really chronically ill and it became a stroke. I had this dream from before, and I was sharing something with a group of people. It was about addiction, actually, years ago. And I just said, oh, next year I'm going to go and walk the Camino. Well, at that point, I couldn't even walk that well. I mean, I could walk, but I didn't have that much strength to walk. But I felt like that's it. And it was like 500 miles in a month, but I had this goal. So it reminds me of the goal of Gate of Heaven. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I just know every morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to take a step. And eventually I will get there. It's just taking the step. And yeah. So Selena would like to share. Good.
I like that question about the steps, because I feel like as I keep working on myself and working on who I am and trying to find my authentic self and just all of the things you're trying to do, and to see my injuries and all that, I can see more clearly the steps behind me and recognize them as steps. That, oh, I attracted that to show me this, and I attracted that. At the time, it might have just been like a my life sucks sort of event. But when you start seeing those things as attractions from that you drew to you because of your injuries, and you start seeing those as steps, it makes it easier for me now to see the steps that are coming up as steps, like seeing them as steps.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like that, looking back and reflecting on those things. And sometimes you have an aha moment. Oh, that's what that was about. That's why I attracted that into my life, because it showed me this, and being grateful for having learned this process to even understand it, to even know that's what's happening. And that it's not all just arbitrary. And
yeah. And as Ailele says, it's like drops in an ocean that it builds, and the holy aspiration. So as long as we have that aspiration, we have that developing that desire all the time.
It does help build faith and desire when you see what's happened before you, and it was actually productive, even if it seemed terrible at the time.
Absolutely. I had this little thing that came to me, and I walked the Camino. At the end, I remember seeing a T-shirt that made me laugh, and it said in Spanish, but it said, "Where there's a dream, there's a way." So, if I have a dream of getting to the gate of heaven, I'm going to find a way, and I know there is the way. So let's go with that, and don't let this reality get in the way. Okay, moving on. Last question, I think. Ailele mentions, we're on page 190, how John of Revelations, I believe, beheld something of the glory of the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom that was set on earth, but the earth, by man's disobedience, has been temporarily placed under the dominion of sin. The kingdom shall be restored, for there shall be a new heaven and a new earth, wherein dwelleth rightness. And Ailele continues, God knew the weakness and frailty of the flesh, and could love and wisdom demand that the soul should reach its divine standard at a single bound. Therefore, when God created the earth, he also created a lower heaven annexed to the earth as a nursery, schoolroom, hospital, or convalescent wards for all and every soul, which assists in the reclamation and restoration of those who have erred and strayed. When the new earth comes into existence, then the need for the lower heaven will be at an end, and the paradise of God will again touch the earth. So how do you feel about man's disobedience and the consequences? And in your awareness of the condition of the earth and humans now, how do you feel about the new earth and new setting of an old idea? I can't even imagine that earth would be like right next to heaven. But that was initially, I guess, like that.
Basically, it's like in that passage, what Ailele is saying is that the kingdom of heaven will be restored on earth. It is going to come back. This is going to happen. There is a plan underway. What was it like for you to read that? And that we are currently in the middle of that happening, and we get to watch it happen. And maybe even be a part of helping it happen in our own unique way, whatever gift we may carry in our soul. So what does that do for you?
I like that you said that. That's why I said I feel like we're on a mission. We're on a mission to get that done. I mean, it's not necessarily going to happen in our time on earth, but we're in that process of it happening. And I guess that's why Jesus has come back, to help that begin that process again.
Virginia.
Thanks.
This is one of the ones I found hard to grasp. It just seems like there's such huge difference between where we're at on earth and that this can be attained. I think it's wonderful. I mean, absolutely. I get excited just reading this, that this is possible. And then I think, how long will that take? Is this like another 1,000 years? Is this, I see it while I see some of this in my lifetime. But then I think there's been so much change right now. We're in the midst of so much change. And
So,
yeah.
so your despair is about time? Like how long will this take?
Yeah, I think that because there's such disparity between earth and heaven that I think it would probably take a long time.
So is it more like, I don't see how it's possible? Like we got to name the corrupt fate here. I'm trying to help name the corrupt fate because that is going to get triggered. The corrupt fate that's kind of being reinforced by the unawakened spirits that are afraid of the change.
Yeah.
Because they have this belief, this wrong belief that, earthbound spirits have this wrong belief that if Earth changes in state, just move over to even into the second sphere, they think their life's going to get worse when actually their life's going to get better. But that false belief, right? And they feed on the corrupt fate. So what's your corrupt fate when you imagine, the kingdom of heaven is being restored back on earth? It's happening right now. What comes up for you around it?
Am I actually contributing to this?
To the resistance or to the, which contribution I think about?
Reaching this goal. Yeah.
Are you saying, can I join up?
I'm thinking, am I actually doing what I'm doing, the little bit that I'm doing, going to make a difference towards this?
But what's that despair right there? Name that right there.
Name that. Okay, name that. I don't.
Yeah, what is it, that thing you just felt there?
I'm not sure. I guess, I don't know if it's faith in myself or that my own abilities or gifts.
Is it enough? Is what I'm doing going to be enough?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you just follow that sentence, see where it takes you, you may be able to pull up that despair or that corrupt faith coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Because for me, even just having this book group and us six being aware of the fact that we can talk to God and God's helping, and we have guides to talk to, and there are spirits who we can help, and we are aware of the sleep state. Just in that, it feels like, because we tend to have this focus on individuals on earth, and that seems impossible, but when we're more aware of the bigger picture, we can see how that, if we can contribute to that, that's going to have a huge influence, and much more than we can realize by just affecting one person on earth.
Right. But again, there's this feeling about having people on earth change so that this could come about. What's that feeling we have? Are we feeling discouraged? Are we feeling like, good luck with that? Skepticism?
I don't know, it just feels, I'm just remembering Michael saying about a strength that's coming. As I can't remember how you expressed it, Michael, but you said that you have a strength in you that you feel like this is the direction to go. I can't really name it myself, but it feels like a possibility. I can feel it's happening, but I can't name it and label it exactly.
And in the meantime, though, there is some feelings of discouragement or despair that we could release so that it will help it even more.
Yes, you're right. Absolutely right. So
Michaela, you did raise your hand.
Michaela, yeah, you had your hand up. Get your finger on the mute button.
I did, and then I felt nervous about what I was going to say. But like what you were just saying then, like I was just trying to tune in, because it's, yeah, that feeling of the fact that other people have to choose God as well, to me feels like it's not going to happen. And it's funny that I should feel that when this whole book is about how there's all this stuff going on around us and it is going to happen. But there's this feeling, particularly in relation to men, I'm noticing it. There's this feeling like I just see with my ex-partner at the moment, I can't believe that he's going to change. So because he's never going to change, I'm never going to get what I want is kind of the feeling I have around it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what's feeling about. That's also where I become pessimistic of like, try changing people.
Yeah.
Never mind. They're not going to do it. But I think this sadness has, these are corrupt fate. We gotta, that's gonna help, because that feeling stops me from even trying, because faith is what you act on. Whatever you have faith in, you're gonna act on it. So my faith, corrupt faith is, don't talk about God with people, like just don't even bother going there. Are you nuts? So then I don't act on it. And then the few times when we do have conversation about God, it's like they just get it. And it's like, oh, I didn't see what I thought I was going to get out of that conversation. People embraced God a lot easier than I expected. So corrupt faith is kind of damaging us and stop us from taking actions. But it starts by naming it. You got to name the corrupt faith and then let it get worked out.
Yeah.
Feel it.
Thank you, Mila. Michael, you had your hand up too, and it went.
I don't know. Do I want to move on from naming this corrupt faith? Do we want to keep trying to name it?
You mean right now? No.
No. Okay. Alicia, what I was trying to describe was a feeling of strength being loaned to me in support of decisions that I made.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And as you're talking, this idea of a new earth, isn't that an Old Testament idea? Centuries before Jesus was born, before there was any way to come back, before he felt a desire, before he discovered the soul union, before he could feel what God's desire was, this way back then, that having a truth teacher coming back to the earth could have been the plan all along. And then our role is just to put it into effect. We each have an intrinsic part to play and an inestimable value. And we just have to do what is ours to do. And I'd love to be great, that's my ambition, but really it's humbleness. It's the little lessons that are deeply felt that are probably the world that'll probably move a world.
Yeah, I agree. The one step, the one drop. I'm feeling about your strength though, like you had it loaned, you feel it loaned to you, but that's our connection to God, our guides, that it can always be loaned to us. Like it can be loaned when we're having conversations about God to people who we think are going to be closed down to it. So it's always there as that strength to be able to help us to keep that faith and stand strong. I like that. Virginia, you also had your hand up and it went.
just something, I just noticed that's something that keeps coming up for me when we're talking about us getting to the gate of heaven, our own progression, about the new earth and what we can do. I always feel this sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure what that's about. Like, that's just my own impatience. I don't know if that's a corrupt faith or that we need to work at it and hurry it so that it can come.
And maybe because on earth we have finite time, whereas actually time, once we pass, is eternal. So we have a very different concept of time while we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Virginia.
Yeah.
Michael?
Maybe there's something about being in this body that feeling a desire in our soul feels like urgency because we're trapped in time and physicalness. But
Yeah.
maybe when we pass over, we'll feel more of the desire part of it and the draw to something and the wanting to bring it in.
Yeah,
and just in the translation, it feels like urgency.
that's reminding me of when Aphraar was feeling that draw to go to and ended up in the magnetic corral. It's like a calling. Something was calling him. So yes, I agree. And maybe that urgency is like a calling as well. Yeah. So how does everybody feel about this chapter now? Now we've had a chat about it. How do you feel about it now? Anyone want to share? Okay, we got a thumbs up. We're a bit happier about it now, less resistant. That's cool. So this is not one of the questions I added, but it just came to me just before coming on. And it's not a question, it's just maybe something, a possibility for pondering upon. So what came up for me was that in reading these books and listening to Aphraar and his spirit friends, I was wondering for myself, how am I engaging with all of this? What am I doing in my life to engage what I'm learning in the book and in a practical way? So I just thought it's maybe something for us to ponder on, because that's the sort of thing that's come up in this chapter for me. And maybe we can ponder on what else, like, for example, Michaela sharing about the sleep state and us talking about that. And I feel like we're all using that. We're all aware of that more now. So maybe there are other things that we can ponder on for ourselves that we could engage in our lives. Anyway, that was all. And I'm glad that we feel better. And Michael has a hand up. Goody.
Once again, reflecting on your question, if you had a tendency to judge yourself and to feel bad about coming up short, I don't think you could have gotten that question. I could not have gotten that question because I would judge myself. I would immediately feel the shame and the shortcoming. But you were able to ask a question that is meant to help us grow, not so much meant to measure us.
No, I felt like Aphraar and his friends were asking us to look at, okay, you read this book and you can see all this and it's great and da 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 da, and you've learned all about the heaven, but how are you actually engaging it in your life? Because it feels like he's really grateful for all the help he has, and he's trying to help us here engage what he's learning there. Yeah, so that's why that came up maybe just before book group.
Like, it's time to put the pedal to the metal, or put a foot on the pedal.
Yay, one step at a time. Mila.
I would say one is that I'm beginning to feel about my guides the same way as Aphraar feel about his guides, that they're beginning to feel like a community of friends. I don't feel as estranged from them. And also that a lot of the tantrum has been worked out. So there's a new me emerging on the other side of the tantrum, having had a chance to get worked out, a lot of feelings getting released. So something new is emerging. So I would say that. So my experiment to engage every tantrumy feeling that came out of the book, I can now look back at the experiment and say, I think it worked. I just went pissy and just went wherever it took me. And here I am at the other side of it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And
I took a risk. I didn't know if it was going to work or not, but I just took a risk and said, here's what I'm going to do with it. Here we are. So
yeah, well, it's you stepping forward and doing that has given everybody a gift.
hopefully I'm grateful.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that about rounds it up. Thank you very much, everybody.